I love collecting amplifiers. There's something that is so cool about plugging into a tube amp, turning it on, watching the tube start to glow as the amp seems to wake up and come to life. The feel of turning the knobs, the heat that radiates from the shell as it gets warmer and warmer, saturating your notes with tube goodness. But as someone who enjoys collecting and having a bunch of amps that are different flavors, there's one big problem with them. They take up way too much space. Yes, collecting amps can be fun, but I think we've all heard the argument that it's a pointless practice when you can get just as good of guitar tones out of digital modelers and plugins in the present day. While this is mostly true, there's still something really special and unique about using analog gear that I don't think will ever be replicated digitally. I like to make the comparison that owning tube amps is kind of like owning muscle cars. They get terrible gas mileage, handle like a jogger during a Portland ice storm.
It's the perfect texture for running, very low impact on its dry snow so your feet don't get wet.
We've seen a lot of people out here, like you said, running, sledding, just enjoying it, enjoying it, enjoying it,
and are just mostly inconvenient to own and maintain when there's better technology on the market. But can anyone look at this car and say that it isn't cool? There's something so badass about muscle cars, and that's why people still buy, restore, and collect them. The same can be said about tube amplifiers. There's a market for them, not because it's the pinnacle of technology, but because it's cool. Now the question I've been asking myself a lot lately is, why do I have these stacks of amplifiers? Yes, they look cool and are fun to use, but they aren't practical. Especially when it comes to taking up space in my small little office studio thing I'm in. And before you say it, I know, first world problems. I'm totally aware that this is a really fortunate problem for me to have. If you've been around the channel for a while, thank you. I appreciate it. You've probably seen me road test the 𝗦𝗔𝗡 stuff, and I've been playing with this for a while to see how it performs in different situations. And today, I want to shoot it out against some of the amplifiers that I have to see if I can start putting some of these amps in storage and switch to the 𝗦𝗔𝗡 system for more day-to-day use. Don't get me wrong, I love the digital stuff and just gear in general, but I also really love dialing in analog gear. And I've been enjoying the 𝗦𝗔𝗡 system thus far, but I've never really done a proper shootout with the 𝗦𝗔𝗡 modules that I have the actual amps of, and to see if this system can be a practical replacement for my ever-growing amp collection and my ever-shrinking office space. What's up everybody, I'm plugged into this VHT Deliverance. So I have two of my favorite amplifiers in this video that we're going to compare to the 𝗦𝗔𝗡 setup. I have the VHT Deliverance that's plugged in right here. We have the Fryette Deliverance module. It's the same amplifier, different name. There's probably lawsuits involved or something. I don't know the whole history. This isn't a history lesson video. But I have the Fryette Deliverance module here. We're going to compare it to this VHT Deliverance 120, one of my favorite all-time amplifiers. And then we're also going to compare the 𝗦𝗡𝗃𝗏 module to my 𝗦𝗡𝗃𝗏 amplifier. And then at the end of the video, we'll actually shoot all of this out in a mix. So stick around until the end so you can hear it in a mix. I'm running an NS2 noise gate into this Ibanez TS9 tube screamer into the front of the VHT Deliverance amplifier. This is what it sounds like. It's got this really great dry distortion that just breaks up in a very pleasing way when you hit the front of it with an overdrive pedal like the TS9 tube screamer. Ultimately, what I would like to do with this system is have it in a rack by my desk over there and use it primarily for recording, but still be able to run out of the power amp into an actual cabinet. Like if I want to reamp a guitar tone and I want to use an actual cabinet instead of an IR, I want to be able to do that with this. And then just swap out the different modules for different amplifier tones. You know? It's kind of like the dream, I think. I mean, that's what's so cool about this system. So anyways, VHT tone one more time. One more thing I should probably mention before we switch over to the 𝗦𝗔𝗔 module is it would be a much more fair comparison if I could run the 𝗦𝗔𝗔 module through the effects loop of the amplifier, but this is actually an MK1 version of this amplifier, so there's no effects loop. So I can't do that. This VHT Deliverance has KT88 tubes in it. It has a lot of headroom. It's very loud. I mean, if you look at the master volume, I can't get it much louder than that. It's like ear-piercingly loud sitting next to it at that volume. And the 𝗦𝗔𝗔 5050 power amp has modified 6L6 tubes in it. They're modified because they're slightly shorter to fit in the chassis of the 𝗦𝗔𝗔 5050, thing. So especially with this amplifier, it's not like a true apples to apples comparison, but I want to see how close we can get it. Like, can we get in the ballpark with this setup here? All right, let's switch over to the 𝗦𝗔𝗔 setup. Okay, now we're running the same pedals into the 𝗦2 module that is running into the 𝗦 5050 power amp, powering this Mesa 4x12 cabinet, ribbon microphone. You got the same setup I had before. We have the settings roughly the same on the Fryette Deliverance module, but there's a caveat here. Not only do we have depth and presence on the module, but we also have depth and presence on the actual power amp. It's just something I feel like I should mention. Here's the tone. Okay, I feel like it's pretty in the ballpark just right away. Now, we do have a bright switch on here as well. That's something that at least the MK1 version of the Deliverance doesn't have. So here's with the bright switch off. To be honest, I'm kind of surprised. I mean, we're definitely in the ball. There are some subtle differences, but just sitting in the room playing next to it, it's really, really close, man. It definitely has the vibes of my VHT Deliverance 120. And look how small it is. It's tiny. This thing's big and heavy. And I think the biggest thing that is surprising me right now is, even though I do have to run the power amp quite a bit loud, I mean, look at the master volume difference between these two things. Even though I am running the master volume quite a bit louder on the power amp, it's still really loud. For example, volume in the room is comparable to what I had the VHT Deliverance at. And could I get more volume out of the Deliverance, like the actual amp? Probably. Do I need it? Probably not. Let's turn the gain up here just a little bit, maybe something like that. I mean, listen to those chugs, man. Just absolutely brutal. I'm really glad I'm doing this comparison because I could probably clear up a lot of space in my studio now. But before I come to that conclusion, let me test out one of my other favorite amplifiers, the 𝗦𝗐𝗰𝗶𝗹. All right, now I'm plugged into my 𝗦𝗐𝗰𝗶𝗹, and if you just saw that time lapse of me moving these amps around, I actually couldn't get this VHT Deliverance back in the stack of amplifiers. Like, I rearranged the stack of amplifiers to dig it out for this demo, and then I couldn't get it back in easily without having to remove and restack all the amplifiers. And the reason that I even bothered to bring that up is because that is kind of what this system solves. We are on the lead channel here. This is how I had the amp set up last time I used it. Let's hear it. Much more modern, much more tight, more saturation. This is just more of a high gain amplifier. And the reason that I love this amplifier so much is because you get all of that. There's a noise gate built in. It's completely silent right now. It's just a very, very cool amplifier. I could gush about this amplifier. I'm not going to. Let's just move on. But the 𝗦𝗤𝗔𝗡𝗏, really great amplifier. Now, I don't have this input boost on here. We do have a bright and an input low high, and normally I would have these on. And that's without boosting the amplifier as well, but normally I would have those on. The reason that I am not demonstrating it with those on is because the module does not have those features. So I wanted to be a little bit more fair to the module here. The module actually, in this case, has less features than the amplifier. I mean, look at this amplifier. It's like a spaceship, dude. The 𝗦𝗤𝗔𝗡𝗏 module, not as much. But does it still capture the essence of this amplifier? The cojones, I guess. We'll find out here in a second. Let's do one more riff. Fuck. Let's boost the front of this amplifier real quick. You know, just for, why not? It's already plugged in. Sounds good boost as well. And the boost sort of simulates what's going on here with the input high-low control. So that's why I wanted to boost this amplifier, because I do want to boost the module to get that same sort of effect since we don't have the high-low control. But enough saying it, let's just do it. Okay, now we are plugged in to the Synergy system, the 𝗦𝗤𝗔𝗡𝗏 module. As you can hear, there's noise now because there's no noise gate built into the module, but that's okay. Did we get in the ballpark with the module? Sort of. I think we did, sort of. Now, one of the disadvantages that the module has in comparison to the amplifier is on the amplifier, we have this depth boost switch. God, this is so loud. We have this depth boost switch, and I use that all the time. I love the low end that you get out of this amplifier. It's just really, really mean. Just makes your tone super, super thick. And what I'm doing on the power amplifier is sort of compensating that by just turning the depth up. I think it helps, but let's use the contour switch on the module as well and just see like what that does. Okay, I had to dial in the module a little bit differently than the amplifier, but it still has that essence. It still has that savagery of the 𝗦𝗤𝗔𝗡𝗏. It sounds great, man. I really, really like this module a lot. I think it sounds terrific. This is one of my favorite modules, the ones I've tried so far, but let's dial back this gain here a little bit from where we had it, and let's boost it and see how it handles a boost. Dude, it sounds great with a boost in front of it. It really just adds like the extra I like out of the amplifier. And while I think that owning all of these amplifiers is really, like I said, I really like owning these amps. I really like having them. I don't think it's necessary to keep all of them in this room like this, and I think that this is really gonna save me a lot of space. And if you are like me and you like having different amplifiers for different vibes, consider that once you are in the 𝗦𝗔𝗡 system, I think this rack module costs like, here, let me just tell you. Why speculate, right? Okay, so the 𝗦𝗔𝗡 2-module rack system retails for $7.99 through Sweetwater. By the way, if you are interested in purchasing any of this stuff, I will leave a link for my Sweetwater affiliate down in the description below. It helps the channel out at no extra cost to you. I really appreciate it when you guys do that. Helps me out a lot. The power amp retails for $11.99, so it is not a cheap system. Every new amplifier flavor that you want is $400. Each one of these modules retails for like $3.99 US. So it's just kind of a cool system for people who like collecting all these different amplifier tones, but don't maybe have the space or want to invest in these amplifiers, because like just the VHT, the first one, the amp that I showed you, was like $1,600, I think. That's what I paid for it. Something like that. This amplifier, the ENGL Savage Mark II, cost me $2,000 used, I believe. So just right there for these two amplifiers, you're talking about $3,600. And you could have the modules, the rack unit, and the power amp for $1,000 less. You know what I'm saying? You guys get where I'm going with this thing? Okay, so now for you bedroom producers or you studio enthusiasts, let's shoot these out in a mix. After shooting the modules out, I've got to say I'm pretty impressed with the quality for studio applications. While the amps might have more headroom and let's call it EQ range, I still think the modules capture the essence of the real amplifiers, especially with the 𝗦𝗡5050. But after playing them back to back and doing some critical listening, there are a few sacrifices you'll have to make if you want to consolidate your amp collection to what amounts to a pile of Super Nintendo cartridges. The first thing is there is definitely less range in the high and certainly the low end. This was especially true with the Savage. While I don't think that this is a huge deal, especially in a studio scenario where you are going to have post EQ, etc., it is worth mentioning. The second thing I would mention is that with the 𝗦𝗡5050 specifically, this gets pretty hot. It's really not that surprising since it's two 50-watt amplifiers crammed into a 1U rack unit, but again, worth mentioning. I've heard people complain that the fan is really loud and gets annoying with long use durations, but it didn't really bother me at all. Maybe if you had this in your control room and you were using it to power cabinets in an isolation room, then it might be more noticeable, but even when I was making this video and talking between playing the 𝗦𝗔𝗡 rig, it didn't bother me. Those are the two main things that I noticed, and if neither is an issue for you, then I would say what you are getting is pretty great. Real analog circuitry designed in partnership with the original amps manufacturers in a nice, neat little package. Able to push real speakers, or just have analog preamp sounds if you'd rather do that. And while this still not may be as convenient as a plugin or other digital solution, it does keep everything analog. Back to my analogy, if you are a muscle car enthusiast that keeps your mint Challenger garaged except for special occasions, and the thought of driving a Tesla makes you sick, this is kind of like settling for a 6-cylinder daily driver that still has the feel and response of your hot rod, just with better gas mileage. Now back to the topic of this video, is the 𝗦𝗔𝗡 system going to replace my amp collection? Probably, at least a good chunk of it. I am quickly running out of space in my studio, and while I don't think this will fill my desire to collect some of these amplifiers, it will be nice to be able to put these in storage somewhere for safekeeping and get them out when I need them and just have the 𝗦𝗔𝗡 system for day-to-day use. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, make sure to hit the like button. If you really like what I do here on my channel, consider subscribing or joining us over on Patreon, where you can get early access to cuts of videos like this or exclusive content, if that's your thing. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.